So he's an IT consultant and in cybersecurity and development for Dead Food LLC. He's an enthusiast in reverse engineering of embedded systems, and I'm very excited about his presentation today. It's titled "How to Hack an ESA Experimental Satellite." Sorry, so ESA is the European Space Agency. So let's see the impact of what he found.
Thank you very much.
Let's have a big round of applause for Michel. Make sure we started here and people will see and come. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. So, yeah.
We have a technical problem. I think the slide deck is not
Yeah.
right now the right one with the focus. Technical folks are already on it, so please bear with us a couple seconds. The clicker was on the fixed presentation instead of the actual Michel's presentation. Do we have it? You wanna? Yeah, let's improvise something together here.
All right.
Let's sit down, and once we see the slide, we'll get started.
Let's go.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's good. Okay.
Oh,
currently.
all right.
Let's go. If I try. Yeah. Nope. Nope.
On voit encore la présentation.
Ouais. J'ai fourni un drive.
Here we are. All right. Full screen.
All right, perfect.
Here we go. Thank you. Sorry about that.
All right, it's working. Well, kinda. But you see it. At least you see it. So, subject of my talk today is how I hacked an experimental ESA satellites, or a subtitle of it's how to reverse engineer new space implementation and architectures. Idea of the talk today is not to give like a full tutorial about it, but more to give an introduction on what new space implementation will look like from an ESA standpoint, and probably from the other space agencies too. Just to be more accurate, I'm not a space engineer at all. It's so it's going to be very like cybersecurity focused one and more on computer science and actually or the real impact on the space industry. So I'm Maurice Michel Didlot. I'm representing my own company, Dead Food LLC. I'm an independent IT consultant in cybersecurity, and I also help people on development full stack, mobile IoT system, and DevOps. So this work has been done in the context of a contest organized by the ESA and the enterprise CISEC called the ACCISAT. The ESA was providing a satellite called the OPS-SAT that was also developed by the team of the same name as the satellite, so the OPS-SAT, directed by David Evans. And the goal was to call for hacker participation, to find vulnerabilities on it, and to spread awareness about cybersecurity in the space industry. So this is the target, the OPS-SAT, that is embedding platform called the NanoSat MF. That is very different from what you can expect from a normal satellite. It allows to run multiple applications at the same time, so different users can upload different applications. It runs a full system, full Linux operating system, so it can run basically everything that exists already on the operating system, such as AI, data processing, everything you can think about, basically. And it has remote management of the application, so you can upload a new application, decide to start it, to stop it, anytime you want. So more than a satellite, the NanoSat MF is a full platform implementing also a ground station. That is, the goal of it is to make basically on a high level a translation between the classical internet protocols into space protocol developed by CCSGS. And so there is a lot of different arrows on these schematics that is very complex, but what's really interests us is the interaction between the mission control system and the spacecraft. The spacecraft is the actual target here. ESA has been pretty clear about this. The other part is just to get more, to know more about the actual platform and how to hack it. But this is the target, the spacecraft. All the arrows you can see, the green ones are actually files that can be uploaded. So that's the process of processing the files from the experimenter to the spacecraft. This doesn't really interest us in the fact that it's admin privileges and everything. The yellow and purple one are not very interesting too. Actually, the only one that really interests me in this presentation is the blue one, which is the MO one. MO is the name of the service that control the supervisor of nanosat MO supervisor of the satellite, and basically is the core software of it that runs on top of Linux and is managing the applications and everything. This MO service is interacting in a protocol called the MAL, that stands for Message Abstraction Layer Protocol, and allow to remotely upload applications, interact with the supervisor, supporting authentication and privilege management. So this is our target. Blue lines, MO, and also experimenters can open through the purple and yellow ones, arrows, their own protocol and communication to the ground station. So that brings us to the hardware implementation of the actual CubeSat. The bus top green part of the picture you see is a bus. I think it's something that you can find on other satellites and are a very robust solution for low-level communication, allows to reset the software in case of big issues. So this is out of scope here. What really interests us is the payload that has all the sensors like HD cameras, CCSGS engine that communicate directly with the core, that is running on what's called the SEPP, these parts right here, that are basically full ITRM in redundancy, that runs a Cyclone 5 RRM CPU that is embedding 2 Cortex-A9 with 1 gigabyte of RAM. So now let's go directly to my findings and my process on reverse engineering the actual platform, now that you know a little bit more about the satellite itself. So the ESA was only providing a raw image of the disk that was only containing a file like this that is describing a range of bytes that are corresponding to different partitions. Which was interesting, but I directly went with Bindwalk, allowed me to be much faster and to directly extract the part that really interests me, which is the actual Linux file system. And because of my little tool before the actual reverse engineering and my reading of the research paper, I knew that I had to look probably for a Java runtime. So I directly go with a recursive search for jar. I find a systemd service, and I can directly list the available jar files. So there's a lot of files here, but actually the only one that really interests us is the nanosat MO supervisor. The satellite is embedding a lot of different files that are used not here, actually, not on the satellite itself, but on the whole project. It was pretty interesting to know more about the platform by itself. And so I decompile it and start directly looking in the 200,000 lines of Java code. The first thing I get directly is that no functions or class names has been minified, nor obfuscated, which make the process a whole lot easier. So I can directly go with very simple techniques such as full text search, for example, and directly find some pretty interesting entry points and potential injection points for an RC, for example, here. So yeah, first vulnerability I want to tell you about is a vulnerability that is the most critical I found over the three I'm going to present to you today. It's called privileged path traversal write by zip slip on upload malaction. This is part of the code that takes care of uploading of a new application or updating of an application. This is part of the code that we take care of uncompressing the compressed archive into the file system. And this is a pretty common, let's say, vulnerability in this kinds of application of uncompression of tar and zip archives. It basically bases itself on the fact that most implementations are too naive and tend to trust too much the inputs on the actual file name, entry name of each files contained in the archive. So yeah. This is the three lines that are actually very vulnerable in the previous implementation I showed you. And a pseudocode analysis of this to make it simple for everyone is that in an expected case, an entry name should only be a relative path that doesn't go up the root, so doesn't contain any dot sequences that are very classical in path traversal exploitation. So expected case is hello.txt. When you merge the actual target path plus the entry, you get a good target file name to write on. But in case of an exploitation, the tar specification allows you to put dots between them, and if you only merge them without check, it's basically going to result in a write-off file in every location of the file system. So this allows complete takeover of the satellites already, because you can overwrite important files of the system that manage writes, like sudoers, for example, and especially that this supervisor have a lot of writes, as we're going to see later. So the second vulnerability I want to tell you about is a sudo misconfiguration. That's very common in Linux managed system. And even more, this supervisor is running in root in actual production. But basically, the supervisor is running with a user called supervisor that has no password specified, so it can ask for root rights whenever it wants without having to provide password. And the third one is a pretty minor one, but it's just to get an overview of how things has been developed. There is an injection possible in the trimmed app names that is based on the actual base folder of the application you upload. In case of a Windows operating system, for example, there is a limited char set or limited character sets you can set in the name of a directory. But on Linux, you can also name a directory with some meta-shells character that allows you to chain some commands. So in the case where you directly put the name of a folder like this, you can chain and basically RC it directly. So by combining all this vulnerability, a live scenario of taking control of this satellite could be, for example, to register as an experimenter or to impersonate an experimenter on this satellite and convincing the ESA team to upload a malicious archive exploiting the zip slip, overriding some important files, taking over the satellites, and the implications of such hacking could be controlling the satellite, but much more. In case of a thruster, for example, accessible to the system, we could destroy the satellites. We could spy on the results of the other applications running on it, and much more. So this is my conclusion. It's a pretty generic one. But I think you can make easily your own if it doesn't satisfy you. And yeah, thanks to the OPSSAT team for providing the satellites. Thanks for the ESA for organizing and CISEC for organizing such a contest. That was an awesome experience. And here is my sources. I also wrote an article on my blog that is providing more details on it if you guys are interested. And yeah, here is my contact for people that have more questions or need advice on such system. And yeah, thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Maurice Michel. Alors, est-ce qu'on a des questions? Do we have any questions? Feel free to come up on stage. I have one, but it's not cybersecurity related.
All right.
No, but I mean, you might. I think you hinted on what was the question. All right, I'll go first, but maybe this will warm up the room. Yeah, so apparently in space, computer cannot operate like on Earth because of the cosmic rays and radiation.
Yeah.
So in their design, their hardware design, how do they build this reliability?
That's pretty cool. Actually, there is a full research paper from the OPSSAT team that speaks about this. So basically, there is they use different techniques. I think from what they use most of the time. This architecture is definitely not developed, from my understanding, to operate very further the orbit, where the cosmic rays can be much more important. That's also why there is redundancy in the different SCPP. There is actually 4 MyTRM in redundancy, I think, to avoid like a cosmic rays that could corrupt the RAM or registers of the CPU and making the operating system crash, for example. Yeah.
But so the chip, like the SoC redundancy of the cards that you displayed, there are 4 of them. But like, do they need to build resiliency also in any input-output between the components of the satellite?
That's a good
Can it
question,
affect like a wire or Ethernet jack or something?
That's a good question, actually. I cannot answer like this, but I'm pretty sure it has been covered in a research paper. Yeah, I read about it. Yeah. There is a lot of resources actually about this satellite. It's quite impressive, the work that has been done over like around this. I think there is like 6 or even 10 research papers published that are very big, very complete. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very nice.
All right. Anyone has cybersecurity or nonetheless related, please come up on the microphone. Bring your thing if you want to hear the answer.
I have a question. I assume it must be difficult to update the software on the satellite. So could there be vulnerable to old vulnerabilities like Baron Samedit that we saw in Sudo 2 years ago?
Yeah. So that's a pretty good question actually. There is, from what I understood, process to upload the kernel, for example, but it's a very risky operation, of course. So that's also a big concern on these kinds of new space architectures. The fact that they make it easier for the developers to develop on by providing something they already know, they also get basically all the cons of it by getting also vulnerabilities on the actual satellites. Like, for example, as you say, someone that found a vulnerability in Sudo could hack almost all computers available on the internet, almost. Yeah. And now it can even hack satellites. So that's also pretty concerning in my opinion.
Or something like Log4Shell would be like terrible because it's Java. There's a ton of Java, and you're like, we cannot rewrite all this software unless you have an exact copy in a lab.
Exactly.
Then you need to do all this testing.
So they have
Earth.
a ground reproduction of the actual CubeSat to run the test on. The issue is also maintaining such thing like when you take Linux base code plus the supervisor base code, it makes a lot.
Yeah, I assume it must be old versions of those applications.
Sorry?
I assume it must be running old versions of some application or maybe of the kernel as well.
Yeah, so it's used Yocto Linux, so the whole idea of this distribution is being stable and providing the best kernel security. So I think it runs on 2.4 actually, or 3.6. So yeah, this is pretty stable, and we know that there's not much vulnerability in it. But if it comes one day, yeah, they're gonna have our time updating this for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? We have time. Don't be shy. Our last presenter has arrived, but I don't think we're gonna rush the schedule anyway. Maybe we will. I don't know. So, okay, I'll go with something. So you went pretty fast, right? With the binwalk and the Java grep and stuff like that. So how much time did you have? Like, what's the scope or the...
It has been a contest in total from the organization to the final submission. I think it was 4 months.
Okay.
But I provided 3 to 4 days full-time working on this.
Okay. So you had a long scope, but you spent only like just a couple of days because you had high impact vulnerabilities already.
Exactly, yeah.
And didn't need to do.
I thought it was good enough already to make like a report. It was very concerning too, so I wanted it to go fast because I thought that if it was in production, it could be an impact like in 3 months span. Lots of stuff can happen. So I submitted directly when I found this, And also, most of the time I spent on during this 4 days of working is analyzing the supervisor JavaScript code, which is a large code base already, and it's pretty interesting software that does a lot of stuff. So finding vulnerabilities, I basically had to read everything and take attention on each step of it, and I based all this also on the research papers, so all this was kind of a lot of work, already, to get it done,
And any vulnerabilities that would be... Oh, we have a question. Okay, I'm gonna do this since we're on the topic, and then I'm gonna go right back at you. So any vulnerabilities in code that was not written by them, by the ESA, but more like a library that was put in the software that was external to them?
Actually, that's pretty interesting. There is almost no dependency on the supervisor. Almost none of them. They wrote everything from scratch.
So like a ton of JavaScript, as you were saying, Java or JavaScript?
Java.
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 Okay. I thought you just said JavaScript. Okay, so a ton of Java that they wrote on their own. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Yes, question.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. How do you register to such contest? I'm not knowledgeable of how it works. So can you please tell me how do we register to such tests?
They basically work like everybody. They do an ad on internet and they try to spread awareness on this. So it goes pretty fast. Once you know that the contest exists, you just have to register. So there was two processes actually: registering to the AXISAT and then registering as an OPSSAT experimenter to get the raw image. But it goes pretty fast actually, and you quickly get in contact with these people. Like they are pretty cool people to work with.
All right,
for sure.
So I'll ask you then where to be at the right place at the right moment.
That kind of work like this, honestly.
Nice, thanks.
No, but the ESA probably has a security page or something. Like it's the ESA, right? It's like the NASA but for Europe. So you can probably like subscribe to their security contests or whatnot. I don't know. Course, is it advertised publicly?
It was advertised, but not too much from the ESA, from what I understood. It's much more CSEC that has advertised it, actually. So I think ESA has done a few posts on Twitter and stuff like this, but it's not very like a very famous competition contest for sure. Yeah. It's quite
so I guess like for us in North America, this is probably why we were not exposed that much, right? Being an European, more oriented.
Well hidden secret. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Maurice Michel.
Thank you very much.
So last time for questions. Oh, we have another. Yes, it's great.
So actually, my company is doing all the cybersecurity for ESA.
Uh-huh.
So if you're interested, like we opened the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence for ESA, and
Cool.
we work with them all the time. So, and we are recruiting people to work in cybersecurity for space.
Yeah,
So
that's
you're
very
welcome.
nice. Yeah.
You hear that,
Thank you.
Vincent?
And I was on site at.
Okay, cool. All right.
I
Thank
have
you.
a question for you.
Yeah?
So how do you actually connect to the satellite to send the comments?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
How do you actually connect to the satellite to send the comments?
Yeah, so the ESA was providing in the contest was providing the access to the ground station. So you would register as any application submitter to the satellite, basically. Yeah, and so the process of it was quite complex. You had to register by submitting a paper first. Of the actual what you found, what you want to test, and then they're gonna run the test on the ground copy of the satellite, and then once it was done, they would run it on the actual satellite in orbit. Yeah, yeah.
But what's the power you actually need to control a CubeSat? Let's say you have a software-defined radio and a good antenna. Is it something you can run yourself, or do you actually need to go through the ground stations?
No, you need to go for the ground station. I think in the
He had kind of an attack scenario slide. I
Yeah.
think that would answer your question. Yeah?
exactly. You have more of this one maybe. This one. So you can see there is a lot of different services exposed to control the satellites from the user perspective. There is, for example, you can see, for example, that all these green lines are translation from a space protocol, kind of file transfer protocol, to an SFTP one. So you have, at the end, you have a server where you connect as an SFTP to transfer files, for example, and it does all this in the background. Exactly the same as port forwarding here, for example. The applications from the satellite can bind ports, and you can connect to ports, kind of like routing, internal routing between this part and this part. So at the end, it's just using like a server, basically. Satellite is connected to internet exactly as you could think about a server, for example. Yeah, yeah.
So basically, you first need to hack the ground station if you want to hack the satellite. Right?
So yeah, that's exactly. That was I was pretty concerned about this in the contest, but CISEC and ESA has been pretty clear on this, that the ground station is totally out of scope because it's very large. Actually, if you start thinking about that, you like it's going to be pretty difficult to go to the satellite. Yeah.
The way I see this is that it could be an insider threat exercise, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You assume that you have in the organization someone who wants to do something malicious outside of the regular authorization perimeter. I don't think it makes the test worthless. It's more like a defense in depth approach.
Yeah.
So there's also multiple scenario. This one I'm providing is fairly simple, but you can imagine basically everything. You can imagine, for example, a registered app developer that has access to this, and for example, in case of a large-scale attack scenario, hacking people that control satellite first, or convincing them to upload a malicious package with phishing and usual techniques of social engineering, for example. This is very probable, especially if you have techniques to impersonate the actual developer of one of the apps running on it.
The way I see, and here I'm gonna go full-blown sci-fi shit, but like the way I see this is a satellite in space is like a potential missile. You can turn it into a missile. So you can kidnap the family of someone who can upload to the satellite and then perform the hack, right? I mean, I still think that a lot of the security angles should be analyzed, including like phishing or social engineering attempt, but also flat out corruption,
And also,
threat to...
For example, in a contest of war, for example, that we saw, for example, with the KSAT on the ongoing conflict with Ukraine, you can see also the there's basically no limits on the works they can provide to attain this. Yeah.
All right, time's up, but very interesting conversation
very much.
here. Thank you again so much. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much.
In 5 minutes, we're going to have Charles Hamilton for our last presentation, also known as Mr. Unicoder. And I don't know yet if he wants to present in French or in English, so we'll discover that in 5 minutes. Thank you.